Today, April 7th, we have 1 Samuel 1 and 2, Psalm 66, and 2 Corinthians chapter 7. I want to go over some of the things here in 1 Samuel chapter 1 and 2. Again, probably familiar ground, and yet, as I reminded us a couple days ago in Ruth, familiar doesn't mean we don't need to read it again. God's good like that. He takes sometimes the familiar and reminds us of things that the first 6 times maybe we didn't catch. Like, really? Yeah, it works that way. So, chapter 1, we've got this family. Elkanah and Hannah. Now, the problem is Elkanah has not only Hannah, but he has Peninnah as a wife. So he has 2 wives, and the one has children, and Hannah has none. And so this was always a problem as he goes up to worship each year. And he really loves Hannah. It says in verse 5, to Hannah he gave a double portion because he loved her, although the Lord had closed her womb. And her rival used to provoke her grievously to irritate her because the Lord had closed her womb. So it went year by year. As often as she went up to the house of the Lord, she used to provoke her. Therefore Hannah wept and would not eat. And Elkanah, her husband, said to her, Hannah, why do you weep? Why do you not eat? Why is your heart sad? Am I not more to you than 10 sons? Now, probably if he leaves out the last line, he was on the right track. Right? Like, what's wrong? Are you okay? How come you're not eating? Those are all fine questions. But once you say, aren't I worth more than? Now he's made it about himself. So that's a problem. So, verse 9, after they had eaten and drunk in Shiloh, Hannah rose. Now Eli the priest was sitting on the seat beside the doorpost of the temple of the Lord. She was deeply distressed, that's Hannah, and prayed to the Lord and wept bitterly. And she vowed a vow and said, O Lord of hosts, if you indeed look on the affliction of your servant, and remember me and not forget your servant, but will give to your servant a son, then I'll give him to the Lord all the days of his life, and no razor shall touch his head. And so Eli is watching and thinking that she's drunk. And Hannah answered, verse 15, no, I'm just a woman troubled in spirit. I've drunk neither wine nor strong drink, but I've been pouring out my soul before the Lord. Do not regard your servant as a worthless woman, for all along I have been speaking out of my great anxiety and vexation. So Eli answered, go in peace, and the God of Israel grant your petition that you have made to him. She said, let your servant find favor in your eyes. And the woman went away and ate, and her face was no longer sad. Verse 20, in due time, Hannah conceived and bore a son. She called his name Samuel, for she said, I have asked for him from the Lord. At the end of the chapter, they are bringing Samuel back to dedicate him and fulfill her part of the vow that she's going to leave him there with Eli. And the contrast of this young boy Samuel and the sons of Eli are very quickly going to be seen in chapter 2 as you read through it. And there's a bit of a rebuke, but there's no actual consequence upon the sons of Eli. So God takes it upon himself to bring consequences. It's a fascinating start to a very interesting book, a time of history for the people of Israel. And when we look at things like this, in one sense it's history, and that's true. And then we're always asking the question, well, so what? Like, how does that impact me? The question isn't so what, it's now what? Right? Now what? Well, maybe it's prayer and calling upon God. It's a valuable thing. Maybe God grants us the desires of our heart in his timing. Maybe we shouldn't make judgments of other people when we're not sure of the whole story. That's what Eli was doing. So there's some interesting things to think about, some interesting things to ponder as we read here about Hannah and Eli and his sons and how he's failed as a father. And yet it's almost like God's giving him a second chance, if you will, as he's allowing Samuel to be under his care. God's way ahead of us in how he's working. It's the old adage, he's playing chess, we're playing checkers. And if that's true, which it is, I think, even more so than that, we can trust him. We can bring our brokenness, our fears, our pain, our suffering, our disappointments, bring them before the Lord and trust him to do what's right. Till next time, keep growing little by little.